Hey, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. We might have a few folks on the west side. I think a lot of folks are on the east side. I'm Andrew LeBaron, and we are discussing motels versus hotels today in converting them to apartments. And I'm just gonna, I actually want to ask my team real quick. Can you see my face right now? Or is it just the screen? Here, maybe I'll move this way. There we go. Cool. Awesome. I don't need to ask my team because I know. Guys, welcome. I am Andrew LeBaron. I am one of the co-founders of Motel to Apartment Conversions, and we are rocking and rolling in South Texas and Arizona and other states in acquisitions, renovations, and stabilization of motel or hotel conversions. Today, we're going to talk about why you would want a motel or why you'd want a hotel. These are going to vary. These are very different asset types. I know they don't seem that different, but they are pretty darn different. Bear with me as I clear out of some screens here. Cool. Yeah, our property types between motels and hotels do vary, and we'll discuss that here in this call. If you want to post a question, please do so. We will see those questions. If you have a comment, or if you want to let us know where you're tuning in from, we want to know. We're here to work alongside you. For hoteliers that are watching this, please feel free to reach out to us and ask us how we can partner, how we can work together on converting your existing motel or hotel into apartments or apartment style dwellings. I do say apartment style dwellings carefully, as not all buildings are totally converted to apartments. When you say this in the real estate world, when you say converting a hospitality asset to an apartment, you do mean that you change the zoning, you change the use of the property, so on and so forth. And that could be very problematic depending on where you're doing this. A lot of cities are being very difficult to work with. They shouldn't be, but a lot of cities are being very difficult to work with in regards to converting an existing hospitality asset to apartments, even though they're in dire need of housing. So that is a whole other subject for a whole other day, and maybe we touch on it in this webinar. But today we're going to talk about the differences between the two and which one you should choose. All right. Okay, distinguishing motels and hotels. Let's talk about it. What is a motel and what's a hotel? A lot of people think they're synonymous. You know, there's really no difference between the two. We do know that motel characteristics vary, or they differ in hotel. Motel is typically an exterior corridor property. It is typically adhering to a totally different demographic, and it could be in areas that are more rural. It could be in areas that are probably not totally conducive to resort living or touristy areas. Motels kind of just fill any part of the suburbs with very temporary nightly housing. That's really what a motel is. There's fewer rooms. They're small. They're very small. They could be under 300 square feet even. And these are some of the main characteristics. Another characteristic of a motel I thought was really clever. Someone told me is if you can sit in the parking lot and see all the rooms or all the front doors of each room of the building, that's most likely a motel. So that's kind of a cheat sheet. What is a motel versus what is a hotel? Motels are exterior corridor properties, meaning you are entering your room from the outside. And that is very different than how a hotel is set up. Hotel features include an interior corridor, meaning you go through a lobby, you go through a waiting or reception area, you go through hallways, and there's some common area as well. And then you enter your room, which is typically not exposed to the elements or the outside. Usually these are higher room counts. Most of the time they're above 60, above 80 rooms. So 60 might be the bottom. And from there they can go up to 4, 5, 6, 800. There's some wildly huge hotels in other countries that, have 1,000 rooms, right? Obviously, we're not attacking those buildings, but hotels have kind of a higher count of rooms. Spaces are larger on the inside. Instead of 300 square feet, you might have 380, 400 square feet or larger. Sometimes they might still be hovering around the 300, 350 square feet area, but they would include more amenities. They would have more amenities for the guest, which would include a gym. They might include a racquetball court or pickleball court, or they might have a seating area, business lounge, coffee area. There's a kitchen, maybe there's a continental breakfast offering, a pool. They might have more amenities than a hotel, or excuse me, than a motel would have. Now, there are motels that do offer all those things. So that's why it's kind of tricky to distinguish the difference between the two. So, and what are the conversion implications between a motel or a hotel? Well, motels offer simpler layouts for apartment conversions. I mean, it's pretty darn basic. What you see is what you get. It usually also means that motels, because they're older most of the time, motels were a lot more popular back in the day. There's going to be a lot more that you're going to replace there. The replacement costs are going to be higher in the beginning, or the rental costs rather, not the replacement costs, but the renovation costs will be higher. And you're going to have to battle things like asbestos or radon or lead. You might have to raise ceilings. You may have to reinstall electrical. There might be old insulated wiring. You might have old plumbing. You might have galvanized pipes. You might have all sorts of problems. Pinhole leaks in your copper lines. So there's a lot of problems that come with a motel. But if you're skilled and you're strategic, it could be an excellent acquisition model, which we'll talk about. Hotels, they're great. There's a lot more options for leveraging a lot of the community spaces inside of a hotel. So using the lobby, using the gym, using the extra amenity spaces, the garden style spaces. Motels also provide garden style interior spaces, community spaces, I should say. But I would say that hotels do offer a lot more opportunity, and I would believe be more competitive than a motel would be. But it depends on what your strategy, what it is, and what it looks like. So, motel conversions. I started off in motel conversion. Actually, I can't even say that. I started this whole thing buying a Studio 6 with a partner, which is not a motel. It is an extended stay hotel. So I take back what I said. But afterwards, I got really good at the motel conversion, or at least understanding what that process might look like. And I won't say I'm the best at it, far from. But being in this space for a while, you understand how an adaptive reuse project, like taking a motel and turning it into something livable long term on something built in the 50s, can be quite a challenge. You learn that, and you learn the hard way. I don't know if there is an easy way. Adaptive reuse projects are tough. Office to residential is tough. Motel to residential is tough. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with the construction. It has to do with working with politics or the city, securing permits, so on and so forth. So let's go through this. These are cost-effective acquisitions. Motels are cheap, okay? Motels are very cheap. They're cheap for many reasons. They're cheap because banks don't want to finance motels. They don't finance them easily. They're cheap because motels, most of the time are older and they're out of code. They have not been brought up to code. Even if they have been brought up to code, it's a motel. It's the most undesirable asset in commercial real estate, or I would say one of the most. And here, let me explain why. When a resident, we call them residents, but let's just use the word tenant. When a tenant does not qualify to live in a home or to live in an apartment, even a B class or even a C class apartment due to previous evictions or criminal background or other nefarious periods in that tenant's history, the last resort is a motel. So they come to the building that we are looking to purchase. They go to the buildings that will let them in. They go to the buildings that don't have a background check. They go to the buildings that will take the cash and not card. And those are motels, okay? They're not Airbnbs. They're not even hotels. Hotels are getting a lot more difficult to enter. So they go to the bottom of the barrel buildings, and that's a motel. So motels are notorious for their inability to get financed for many reasons. Some I just mentioned. They are, because of that, they are a huge opportunity if you have an angle in renovation, in taking a property and giving it a facelift, and in working hand in hand with the city. If you have a great expediter, a zoning attorney, and you're able to build a team around your project, especially if it's a motel, and you go work with the city and give them a business plan of how this eyesore is going to turn around, you have a pretty good chance of getting some help. I don't know if they'll give you tax concessions or property tax concessions, or if they give you any spiffs or grants or any upside as far as whatever that might look like. They don't always do that, and a lot of times cities have this kind of negative outlook on investors. For some reason, they just do. But when you approach the city and you give them your business plan to turn this whole building around, to take this eyesore from what it was and provide more housing for the city's residents, that's where you're going to turn heads. And that's what we've done. And that's how we've been successful in converting, for example, 120 South 4th Street, McAllen, Texas, from a hospitality asset to a multifamily asset, because that's the approach we took. Number 2, niche market appeal. Vintage aesthetics can attract a specific tenant demographic seeking unique, nostalgic living spaces. This is actually really neat. And especially if you do this right, and again, you have to do this right. There is no cutting corners. This thing needs to look super, super good when you're done. I've seen some excellent projects completed where motels were brought back in time. The neon was replaced. All the bells and whistles, the paint was matched to what it was back in 1955. The original sign was beautified and powder coated and ready to go. And some of the furniture on the interior was also matching the aesthetics of the time, the colors, maybe the green shag carpet, whatever that is. And it's cool. It now has become a nostalgic novelty or a destination. That is a total possibility in the boutique motel acquisition space or even the apartment space. But most likely, I think your better bet is going to be taking an eyesore and turning it all around, but keeping some of the vintage appeal, keeping some of the old signage and maybe beautifying it, or keeping the patina on some of the old stuff. You can also get a history of the building and put them into each unit and on a plaque or on a paper. There's a lot of really cool ways that you can present the past for those who are living in there today. And even if it's got new LVP flooring, it could still have that aesthetic of yesterday's aesthetic, the vintage feel. So, and obviously these are manageable project scales. You know, these are smaller deals; they're not huge. So, one GC, one commercial GC who has had experience in old properties or older commercial properties, make sure you vet them well. We like to work with Waltz Construction. They're a good group. And when you work alongside a really experienced commercial general contractor, these projects they'll love these because they're quick turnarounds. They're smaller. You know, they're not 100 plus units. They might be 30 units, 20 units, 40, 50 units. Still nothing crazy. And it's a quicker reno timeline, and you're quicker to get your investor capital stabilized. Once you finish renovations, you should have already been marketing this thing and getting some people in the door with your leasing group. Here's some advantages of the hotel conversion. You know, it's obviously you have a higher room count. You know, it's economic viability is definitely there. You got more rooms. The more potential income that any investment may have, it will slowly outweigh some of your margin of error. Okay. So the higher income potential can outweigh or offset your margin of error. So if you don't have a ton of income potential in any property, your margin of error is very high. If you have a high income potential, your margin of error is slowly diminished, which is great. So with with hotels, you have 80, 100, 150, 200, 250 rooms that are going to that are going to be able to provide the type of income that allows you to make mistakes. And that's really important. If first of all, never go into a project thinking you're never going to make a mistake, because you definitely will go into a project thinking you'll make, you definitely will go into a project making a mistake, whether you think you won't or not. Mistakes will be made. And if you don't make them, your partners or vendors or general contractor will make the mistake. So someone's going to make a mistake. Do you want to make a mistake on a very low margin of error or a high margin of error? So these are the questions that you have to answer. Anyways, higher room counts equals better projected economics of the deal. So financing options. This is probably one of the biggest ones, right? You're going to get the cash you need. Is it easier than multifamily cash? No, it's not. Multifamily cash, I think, is one of the best for residential living, commercial residential living. Multifamily capital, or a multifamily loan, multifamily zoned assets for the type of loans that you might be seeking. Freddie, Fannie cash, 80% LTV. Those are awesome. You probably won't get that easily, if at all, in the hotel world. Depends on the relationships you build. And off the top of my head, don't quote me on this, I don't believe Freddie, Fannie cash would be available with the same terms as multifamily as it would for hotels. A very popular product is an SBA loan. And SBA loans are great because even though you have to come up with more cash down, they have a lower LTV. The approval rating, or the approval, sorry, can't talk today. The ability to be approved for an SBA loan, if you're working with partners who have done these types of acquisitions before, is really high, and it's faster. It's actually faster. So we do like SBA loans. Institutional lenders, they're more likely to fund larger hotel conversion projects. When I say institutional, I'm not saying Chase Bank, I'm not saying Wells Fargo, I'm saying some private alternative banking partners or credit unions or family offices or PE firms or VC firms, specifically real estate private equity firms. They love alternatives like this. When I say they love it, they're very strict on their terms, but these are usually pretty fruitful deals. And then obviously hotels have a more desirable tenant profile. And again, I don't like the word tenant. I like the word resident, because what we do at Parkrise is we build a place for individuals to reside. They can be there as long as they like. They can be there a day, a month, a week, a year. In our buildings, they stay as long as they like. We have variable term stays, and a tenant is just a word that is, to me, is almost just derogatory. Nobody wants to be a tenant. Tenant just has kind of a negative feel to it, but people love to hear, I'm a resident. This is my home. So hotels naturally do attract more diverse, stable tenant, or excuse me, residents post conversion. So I'll be better in the future on using the word tenant. Financial considerations. So, by the way, if you're ever interested in any of these slides, you can get access to these. We can send them to you. Just shoot me an email, andrew@motels2apartments.com, or just send us a message. I'd love to shoot this back over to you. So motels have a lower acquisition cost. They're much more difficult to finance. I'd say renovation expenses, simply because motels are smaller. They're just your typical, reno expense budget list. I mean, and it really just depends. If it's a old school 1950s motel, you're probably gonna have a much higher reno budget than, a 1980s motel, which, they still make motels today even, but you're gonna just have a much higher reno budget if it's an older building. And then the potential return on investment on a motel, honestly, it's a swing and a miss, because if you have the same type of management that you would use for a hotel, you're overpaying for management on a motel. Motels don't bring in a ton of cash or equivalent yield per unit as hotels do. And because of that, you need to be very lean on your management style. You need to be very lean on your tech. You need to be very lean on your property managers. A lot of times it's very popular, which is what we do. We have an on-site, they live on-site staff, and they sweep, they clean, they maintain, they repair, they make improvements, they do it all. For the more difficult tasks, they would be calling a professional or a vendor. But the idea is there's some savings by having an on-site staff member who can kind of do it all, including communicate with residents. For hotels, much different. The acquisition costs much, much higher. In fact, the acquisition costs could be much higher for many reasons, not just the quality or the location. It could be because they have a great reputation. It could be a Marriott. If you acquire Marriott with an existing flag, also known as a franchise agreement or contract that you're going to acquire and use, and you apply and Marriott approves you, that's going to be very expensive. With that, there may be a required PIP or property improvement plan. It is going to be a much higher acquisition cost. Of course, there are SBA loans and products out there that you could much more easily leverage versus the motel world. But again, it will be more costly. Financing, as I just mentioned, wildly more accessible, and your reno expenses, depending on what you want to do or what you acquire, will be substantial. And it's simply because you have a very large building and you need to use a very reputable commercial GC. Then with motels, you could probably get by with some residential GCs, licensed GCs who can take care of shop. With hotels, you're going to need a commercial GC. You're going to have higher fees. You're going to have a higher, just higher costs altogether. It's also going to cost more simply because it's a nicer product. You have a nicer box in a nicer area is going to require nicer tile, nicer carpet, nicer finishes. It just kind of comes with the territory. Plus, you have more units, so your reno expenses will be significantly higher than a motel. Now, let me jump on that for a second. If you have a hotel that is an extended stay already, and they already have kitchens, and it's newer, and it might be a fire sale, then you might have found one of the best deals ever. So just be aware that there's opportunities out there where you can jump in. If you had the cash, you had a partner with the cash, you can quickly purchase these buildings. And they may already have kitchens. They may already have the finishes that you needed. Maybe it was built 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Things happen. And sometimes you run across just home run opportunities. So very rare though. So just be aware that with hotels, you will be spending some coin. And then the potential ROI on a hotel will be substantially higher. And the reason why is because hotels, once stabilized, beautified, and converted, you're going to have more buyers for that building than you would a motel. You're going to have better residents for that building than you would a motel. And you're going to have higher occupancy than you would have for that motel. Of course, that has a lot to do with variables, including property management, but your hotel is going to be a more desirable product than your motel would be. I say that carefully because I've seen some renovations on motels in great areas that just became, the bee's knees. Everybody wanted to be there. So it really does depend on your operator. It depends on your project plan, and it depends on the location and what you're offering. Hotels can offer a lot, almost like a resort, right? You have amenities that motels do not have. And if your motel is simply just 30 studio apartments and nothing else, then, obviously you're not going to be as valuable as your competition. That is the difference between the two. Something that I will just finish and end with is you have to make the right choice based on your current situation. In the beginning, and this graphic is great. I love this graphic. Notice how he's looking at the motel. In the beginning, that's what I did because motels were cheaper. One of the motels that we bought was $325,000. Another one that we bought was $690,000. We barely even broke $1 million. We have 2 buildings. So your motels will be substantially cheaper, but they'll come with much higher risk. I would really urge you to, if you're watching this and you are an investor or you are an operator, I would urge you to build a fund. Okay. So what we did, we built a fund. A fund is a pool of capital, which you do this through an SEC attorney. So you do need to do this the right way. It's a pool of capital that is specific in the documentation known as a private placement memorandum of what you can and cannot purchase. And I would open it to motels and hotels or anything of the sort in those 2 asset classes. And the reason why I would do so is if you raise all this capital, let's say you raise 50 million, and you see an opportunity to buy a motel, and the motel as is sits at $1 million, maybe the value is $1 million with an income approach appraisal, and they're willing to sell it to you for $250,000, that's immediate equity gain right off the bat. You can leverage your fund to buy that asset. And because you have a fund raised, you can move quickly. That's the benefit of having a fund when you're buying motels and hotels, is that you can move quickly. You don't have to wait and raise all the capital and then buy it. If you have to raise all your capital first and put it under contract, then you're probably going to fetch a higher price. You're going to be paying a little bit more. Time is money, right? I I would also say focus on hotels with higher room counts. If you're going to do a hotel, if you want to focus on hotels, get the higher room count and do not combine units. Combining units reduces revenue. It just does. If you're in a market that will never have a 100% occupancy, which nobody has 100% occupancy. I've seen very close, but average might be like 75, 74% occupancy in the hotel space in Class A. But if you have a lower occupancy rate in a given area, maybe you do combine a few rooms to create an additional amenity for the residents, right? Maybe you do. Just be very judicious and choose high room count hotels. I would look at poor performing motels and hotels. I would also look at distressed buildings. Distressed sellers, distressed buildings, and poor performance are going to be an indicator for potential forced equity. You can force equity in these buildings by offering what they're worth when they are poorly performing. When you do that, you're building equity on the purchase. You make money when you buy. You don't make money when you renovate or when you sell. You make money when you buy. So buy it right. I will tell you one last story. When we bought 120 South 4th Street, McAllen, Texas, we did not pay full price. I think we paid around $50,000 under full price. And we paid $60,000 down. We paid 0% interest. It was free money. On top of that, we paid $0.00 for 18 months. So for 18 months, no interest accrual and no payments. It was literally pay the $60,000, you own a building. Now that balloon date came pretty quick, but it was only 29 units. So we had some time to renovate and stabilize and refinance, which we were able to do. And that was great. And we learned a lot of lessons. It still does not help us when you cannot control the city, which you'll never be able to control. If you can influence the city and you just happen to have a great influence on the planning and zoning and development department, then by all means, bombs away. If you don't, just be very careful, tread lightly, because I've seen nightmares. I'm seeing nightmares now. We're in a nightmare right now. And hopefully it resolves itself. Luckily, the nightmare isn't so bad because we bought it right and the market's still doing great. So just be aware that the things you cannot control, those variables, account for those and assume that the worst will come. And if you do that and the deal still pencils, then you're golden. Guys, thank you for joining us today. I actually don't have this up on my full screen here. I just need to see if anybody's messaged us. Oh boy. I'm going to take the full screen away here. There we go. Okay. If you have questions moving forward or you want to get in touch with us, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn, email, YouTube. Phil, good to see you. Phil Haddad, good to see you, Phil. And shoot us a message. My email is andrew@motels2apartments.com. It's motels, MOTELSTO apartments.com. You can also just private message me or message our LinkedIn page. We are actively searching for partners. We're actively searching for capital, and we're actively searching for deals. We are launching a brand known as ParkRise, and we have some pretty big things on the horizon. I know I look really tired. Want to thank you for watching and joining us. And again, if we have not spoken before, reach out. Let's hop on the phone. Appreciate you. We'll be back here next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And guys, have a wonderful day. Welcome to your new home in McAllen, Texas.
This place used to be totally different. We took 29 motel rooms that were dated. Remember, these were built in the 50s, and we turned them around. We gutted these down to the studs, We replaced the electrical, we replaced the plumbing, we even added gas lines, and now we have a beautiful 29-unit multifamily asset. So bear with me, there's a lot that we're packaging into this one offer for the resident. In this motel to apartment conversion, we have sewer, water, trash, electric, internet, washer, dryer, dishwasher, microwave, oven, stove, all included for just one monthly fee.
Y no se preocupe, nosotros hablamos español. Go ahead and go to studiosonfourth.com, check out the floor plans that we have available, and submit your information. And just a friendly reminder, we have everything included: sewer, water, trash, electric, utilities, even fiber, high-speed internet. Submit your info, and we'll get back to you. Welcome home.